Hello, it's me, and today we're going to work our way through this ghost cube. So just when I thought I'd seen it all and I'd done most mods and thought that I got the hang of it mostly, comes along something like this. Something very unique, very creative, an interesting variation on the theme. Now this is a mod, much like the other mods that you've seen, kind of has a look similar to what you'd see with an axis cube. You know, this guy over here, and you can see some of the superficial resemblance. You see these, the square over here, and you know, it actually looks like it could just be an axis cube if you look at it like this, but in that this is also a corner turner here, and if you grab a corner here, this moves here as well. So at first the thinking is, well, maybe it's the same kind of a mod, except for the fact that it's also one color, much like this mirror cube, also called bump cube. So the thinking is, okay, instead of using colors to define what you have to do, we can actually just use shapes, which makes it a little more challenging as well. Now, this is not the only cube to cubic transformation that we've seen. Of course, there's these, and then there's the Fisher cube over here too, which has its own issues with it, own potential parities with it as well. But what makes this different from all the other mods is that in its cubic form, I can get this to turn, I can get the middle to turn, I can get the edge to turn. But in the cube form, that's all I can get. I can't turn this over here. So this is quite obviously the middle here. This is the edge, 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 and edge, corner, 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 corner. And normally what we see is we see the edges articulate with the centers of the other side, but this one doesn't, because this center is actually over here. So what they did is, it's like they took a Rubik's Cube, they turned it by about anywhere between 30 to 60 degrees like this, took it like this, and then they chopped it down and turned it back into a cube, extended it, did whatever they did, and turned it back into a cube. Because this, so too, you can move one layer, but not the others. And that's kind of what happened here. As long as I can take this edge and move it into a center like this, and take another edge, move it into a center, once I do that, now, very slippery sometimes, now I can make it turn. So when solving this, I can't actually solve it like a cube. I have to solve it into this position and then move it back. So combined with this, the challenge of the mirror cube, where I can't use colors to guide me, it just has to be shapes, combined with the challenge of this guy over here, which is more of a corner turner, so I have to change my perspective, and you have yourself the ghost cube. Probably among the tougher of the mods to figure out. So solving this guy, maybe I'll have some of its cousins here in the background. Whoops, where do you think you're going? Just for show? Anyway, so to solve this, it's probably a good idea to familiarize yourself a little bit with the puzzle before attempting to it, because you could get pretty lost with this one. When it's scrambled, it looks pretty much like this, but only without color schemes to help guide you, and without even the shape to guide you too. So when looking at this, let's start off by focusing on the two sides that we can actually move when it's in the cubic form. Because the two centers are corner centers. This center is on the corner, this one is on the corner, and they happen to be the centers that move in the cubic form. The other centers are not corner centers. They're actually within the edge. They're buried in the edge over here. So when looking at how this is configured, because we can more easily get these as our first layer, and then we do the second layer really without much guidance at all, and then the last layer, of course, where there's the potential for certain types of pseudo or false parities. I say false parities because this is a 3x3, and as a 3x3, there's really no such thing as parity problems, just misplacement. Anyway, bear in mind this is a compact puzzle. It's a perfectly shaped cube at the end. So if you see pieces that appear to be not quite in place, don't let it go. It's actually not supposed to be there. So you have to find another way of doing it. Let's take a look at the first layer. Looking at the edges, the pattern is pretty consistent. You have one edge that it has that's a pure rectangle, one color, symmetric shape. Then you have two that are these trapezoidal shapes. Now on this particular side, both trapezoidal shapes are of one plane, here and here. And then you have another corner that looks like a column. Now I'm not one to try to memorize things before solving. I think it's more of a challenge not to, but this is kind of an exception, and it's probably a good idea it's probably a good idea to familiarize yourself with some of the shapes. So a column shape over here, two trapezoids that are opposite each other, and then this over here. Now the other shape, the other side that actually turns in the cubic when it's in the cubic form is patterned pretty much the same way because they're both corner centers. Once again, you have a shape here, a rectangle that's perfectly symmetric, much like this. It's not exactly the same, so you can't get one confused for the other, but you have this. You've got two trapezoidal shapes, which is here. The difference from one side to the other is that these trapezoidal shapes aren't on one plane. On one side it is, but on another side there's like an overhanging ridge. Now there may have actually supposed to have been a sticker, a black sticker here. It didn't come with that. Maybe it fell out, but it's okay. I may try to cut a sticker there and put that on there just for the sake of completeness. Looking at this trapezoidal shape, again, both of these were in the same plane, no overhanging ridges. This trapezoidal shape does have an overhanging ridge. So here and here, same thing, just with an overhanging ridge. And then of course you have a column over here too, but this also looks a little different in that it's a little angulated. The line here is a little angulated. So if you keep that in mind, then you can have a pretty good idea of what the edges of these top and bottom sides are supposed to be. Trapezoids, columns, and rectangles. Looking at the edges that are in the edge only layer, the second layer, you see none of them look like that. You got this kind of a trapezoidal shape, but it has overhanging edges on both sides and not just one side. Same thing here. That bit of knowledge is going to be the difference between a much more efficient solve and a lot of frustration. So when scrambling this puzzle, what we can do is just start moving this over here. But if we wanted to get a full scramble, as long as I'm lining the edges with a center here, then I can start to move from other planes, like so. So I'm just going to demonstrate this movement here. And again, all I have to do is make sure that edges and centers are lined up. And we're kind of moving it out of the cuboid form here. And getting that classic mod scramble, getting all jumbled up, although I shouldn't say jumbled, it's not really jumbled. And I'm just going to try to separate all the corners here. Speaking of corners, I didn't really get into the pattern of what the corners look like, but that's okay. Again, I don't want to do too much memorizing of what the solved state looks like. It takes away from the challenge. The purpose of this, for me, is not to become a speed cuber with it and to make it fast, but to, actually have good solves. So, I'm going to take it the rest of the way. Ghostly abracadabra. Okay, and we got it. Nothing looks more ominous or scary than a scrambled ghost cube staring back at you. So how are we going to navigate our way through this? Well, we're going to use our knowledge of the overall structure like we had talked about, but we're also going to have an understanding of apparent parities that can happen with this. If the edges don't seem to make sense, then I know that there is a misplacement of one of the edges. And there is possibility, there is a certain specific situation that can happen with this. So the first step is I'm going to pick a side, and it's going to be one of the sides where the corner, where the center actually acts as one of the corners. Well, acts as one of the sharp corners, either this one or this one. So I'm going to do this, and the first step is to get the cross. What I mean by that, if I have a cube here, get these in, and normally we coordinate that with the centers here. If I do the supercube version, same thing. Put these edges in and coordinate it with the center. But I can't really coordinate this with the center down here because I don't know which one is which, and it doesn't really matter. These are purely going to be coordinated with this side. These edges, these centers rather, don't have any meaning with this particular puzzle. So what I'm going to do is make use of the knowledge of which edges are supposed to be here. So with this particular one, I know that I'm looking for trapezoids. Here's a trapezoidal one, but it has an overhanging edge. This particular center does not have that overhanging edge. You've got this column, but this has the angulated side, so I believe this one belongs down here. So I'm just looking for the straight ones, the straight column, the straight trapezoids, and the straight square. And what we have is, I don't know, this has that side with a possible missing sticker here. We've got this solid rectangle over here, which can come over to here. Now this is probably going to be up to here because it's pretty straight where that edges here. So I'm just going to move it up, see if it fits, and not quite, which means either number 1, this isn't the right rectangle, or number 2, I just have to turn it upside down. So that's what I'm going to do, to turn this upside down where this is going to come up to here. And again, this is just mod / Rubik's Cube strategy, nothing ghostly about this. Turn it up here, and as you can see, this is the wrong rectangle. So we'll do the right rectangle, which is this one. This one is a little bit longer, so I'm just gonna, there's a little bit of a learning curve in terms of the movement. Turn this over here, and I'm gonna turn this into position, see if it likes it. No, not like this. So I'm gonna turn it in from the other side, right here, and that's good. So we've got this over here. Now let's find something that goes next to it. Both trapezoids are gonna be angulated down here with these sort of angled sides of the center. And here's a trapezoid over here, and here's one over here. So let's just put them in wherever we think that they should go. So I'm going to take this, move it into here, see what that looks like. And nope, doesn't look good over here, which means I can't turn it upside down because it'll be angulated wrong, which means I'm going to want to put it to here. And it has no choice but to have to be here. Well, maybe it does. Bring this here and move this up. Does it fit? Yeah, it fits. So we've got these two over here. Here's the other trapezoid. Oop, again, the wrong one. This is the right one, so we'll move this into position. This is in the bottom level. This is the top. Remember, I'm defining this as my top. So let's just move this into place. Make sure this is put in where all the centers have edges next to it so I can move it, and bang, there it is. So this fits nicely here, here. Now I need the right column, not this one, but this one. So I'll move this just below, and then move in here. Now normally with a supercube I'd have to coordinate it with these centers, but I really have no idea what the shape is supposed to be. I could probably figure it out, but actually I couldn't, because remember, in the solved state, these don't really correlate with these centers at all. So we just ignore it. And then we turn this over here, so this is in. Alright, so we have our cross. We have these in here, just like these guys over here. Now that was pretty easy, that was pretty straightforward. The puzzle gets sequentially harder with each step. So the next step in the solve, whether it's the supercube or the regular one or any of these guys, is we put in the corners. Now I don't have colors to guide me, I just have the shapes. I know that each side, the top and bottom, take 2 triangular pieces and 2 wedge pieces. In terms of where they go, well, that's going to be a little difficult. But even if you put the wrong one in, that's okay, because it can still tell you the relative size of what should go in here. In other words, this looks like a triangular silhouette. Is it this triangle and it's just curved wrong? Well, I'm not so sure about that. It looks like this needs to be a bigger triangle. Like I can sort of see a big triangle coming into over here. So let's find a bigger triangle than this and see if it comes in. Here's a big one. Will this come in? Well, I don't know. We'll hold it like this being F, this being R, and we'll just roll this in the way we would roll any corner in. Turn, turn, turn. You can see that's not turned right. So this is all just strategy. This comes in here, move this in, and you can see this fits nice and flush over here. So that's okay, looking good. Another triangle, does this one belong? No. It looks like it's roughly the right size. Maybe we just have to angulate it and turn it. Doesn't look like it fits in too well. Actually, the base of the triangle sits on the small end of the trapezoidal area, so this base would have to sit here. So maybe it's right. Let's see what happens if we put it in correctly. And yeah, looks pretty good. Now, I'll tell you that with each step, sometimes you reach a sticky point. And the sticky point might not be the same with each scramble. In this case, the corners are acting pretty well. But sometimes that's a sticky point, and for the life of me, I can't seem to find the right corners. In this case, that's not the case. Now, what goes behind here are going to be wedges. Now, which ones? Well, how about this wedge? You can see that this shape is completely wrong. I think I need a smaller wedge than what I have here. So let's find another wedge that's smaller. How about this? It looks like it's roughly the same size, except here, this wedge looks smaller. So maybe this should wrap into here. So I'm going to put this down here. Again, These are corners. This is equivalent to this, so it's the equivalent to moving it in like this. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. Remember, this is my top layer, and I'm just going to exchange these corners here. Turn, turn. And I'm just going to keep turning it until it seems to be in the right relative position. This looks pretty flush over here. Turn it up. And although this is positioned, this doesn't look like it fits. It doesn't fit flush. So I need another corner roughly this size, but a little smaller and a little more tapered and a little more pointed to the top. So let's find a candidate. Well, how about this one? Or this one for that matter. This one looks more pointed at the top than this. So this is a very good candidate. The one with the pointy top. Not yet. Turn, turn, not yet. And maybe one more. Nope. All right, this will be my last ditch attempt. No, you know what? That's not facing the right way, so let's see. See, so you can get sticky points. So it's obviously not that. So let's try a different wedge. How about this guy? Sometimes the shape surprises you, and it's something that you didn't anticipate would go in there. You thought it was maybe a little smaller than that, maybe a little bigger than that. And this seems to fit. This was not the one I would have necessarily predicted, but look, this fits nice and flush. So now I do another wedge here, and this is a small one. This is a pretty small silhouette. So I'm just going to find the smallest wedge I can, which might be here. A lot of this is trial and error. This looks pretty small too. I have to remember it kind of has a pointed top here, so maybe that's what I should be focusing on. There's only so many wedges to deal with. Now this, I can tell you, is not going to be correct because it probably fits in much like this, but it doesn't fit well. So let's find another small wedge. This one's pretty small. And it's pointed at the top, so I think this might fit in nicely here. So turn, turn, and we got it. Okay, so here's our first layer over there. Again, this is the easy part. And now for the more complicated part. The interesting part, the middle layer, all of these guys. So I don't have colors to guide me. Even the shapes are skewed, and I can't put them flush with the centers here to think that they're in. So just like I had to do this side in isolation, I've actually got to do the middle side in isolation as well. But what I have to guide me is to know which ones belong down here and which ones don't. This rectangular piece I know doesn't belong down here, belongs up here. So I'm going to go up here and see which ones I need to bring down, and this is one. It's trapezoidal, but it has two overhanging edges, so that's going to go in this middle layer over here. But where does it go? Well, sometimes you get lucky and you can see some that are actually already in, and we don't have that here, which is okay. Well, when this goes down, you see that there's this edge over here, or this side of the edge over here, has basically two layers to it. It's kind of pointed over here. It's got a triangular piece here, and it's got a straight piece over here. That generally means that this is going to coincide with something like this, where you have a straight piece here and a triangular piece over here. So it's really just a matter of finding what it fits with. So here's this. What if I put this down to here? This triangle is going to be face down, like perhaps here, and this is going to be up here. So I'm just going to position it down and see if it fits, and yeah, it just so happens to fit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring this back up here to get the side back and just do the algorithm that puts this edge from the top layer to the middle layer over here. It's exactly the same algorithm as moving from here to here, which in this case going from the top to the middle left, as you recall, would be UI, LI, U, L, U, F, UI, FI. So basically that moved what was here to here. And it's exactly the same algorithm. So I'm going to do that same thing here. Remember, it's just a mod at this point. And that's exactly how I'm looking at it. And down. So there it is. Now, once I've done that, this is going to act as a keystone to sort of guide like a train the rest of this layer over here. Because now I know this is in, Therefore, it must also coincide with this center. I know this is oriented wrong, so now I'm going to turn this in a way to where it's oriented appropriately to this edge. Now it's not going to be here. This, because it has a pointy end to it with a triangle here and a line over here, I have to make sure that it's coordinated as such with this center. So it's not going to be pointed in this direction. It's not going to be up against this because this is straight over here. It's not going to be up against this. Could be up against this, but obviously that's wrong. So it has to, this has to turn 90 degrees in a counterclockwise way to come over to here. If that's going to be right. So how am I going to do that? Well, what I need to do then is if this part needs to be transferred to here, then this part here is going to be up against this top layer here. So to do that, without messing up what I just did here, is I want to do a 90-degree turn over there. So I'm going to hold this over here where this is on the up layer. Just remember that this is eventually going to be articulating with this, and I just go 2U and 2R. That gets it out of the way. Now I position this wherever I want it, in this case down here. Then I go again 2R to bring this back, and 2U. So this is back, and now this has been coordinated the way that I want it. Now in doing that, I actually took this edge out, but that's okay. It's easily found up here, and we'll put it back in. Now, does it come down to here? Yeah. So now if my theory is correct, this should come down to here and fit flush with both of these centers. So we do that same algorithm to bring it down. So it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. And down. Okay, now here's what's interesting. In this case, it didn't work. It should have worked, but it didn't. I probably could have anticipated that, but I didn't. What that tells me is that this whole thing has to be rotated 180 degrees. The reason why I say that is that if this won't fit flush with this center, this must fit flush with this center. So that's what I have to do. I have to rotate this whole thing around to fit flush with this. But it's not going to be able to do it on this side because, once again, this has to find a side that has a triangle and a straight portion of it. This is all straight, which means it's going to either have to be here or here. Well, let's see if we can figure this out. If I turn this over here, then this big triangle is going to be on the bottom. If I turn this all the way around, this little triangle is going to be on the top, where this line is going to be on the bottom. So this actually needs to rotate. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the same thing where this part has to be facing this way, this part of the center has to be pointed up. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 1, 2. Turn it like this, 1, 2. Turn it back. Okay. So that's what I wanted. Now eventually this will turn into here and fit flush over there. Alright, so to turn this around, I do that same strategy. 2U, this one's easy, 2R, 2U, 2R, 2U, and it fits flush. Now, you might think that I just threw in a new algorithm, and I really didn't. I just set it in algorithmic form, but it's the same strategy. I move this twice to get this whole section down to the bottom layer, then I move it twice out of the way so I can do all my rotating here. So the purpose of an algorithm is if you can't visualize what you're doing too well because there's too many pieces that you don't want to be moving out of sync. So you memorize the pattern, you memorize the algorithm. This, you could do that, and I sort of did, but you don't need to do that because you can easily visualize what's going on. But now this is properly oriented. With this properly oriented, I can now find another piece that fits flush with this. Now this is a long center over here. This is a long side of the center. So I'm going to find an edge piece that fits with that. Well, this here has two long areas. So let's just move this, let's just position this down here and see if this fits. It seems to, but not really. You've got a little overhanging edge, so I'm going to say no. Well, how about the other side of it? Well, the only way to know is to angle it here and to move it down, but I don't know that that's going to work. Well, maybe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to here to see if this fits flush down here. Turn, same algorithm. Movement of this puzzle is pretty incredible. It's really good. Okay, and we like it. So this fits pretty flush. So now we have all of these guys that are in. I just have to make sure they're all flush. Now that this is here, I have but to turn this to match it. This is a pretty long side, so I'm going to coordinate it with a long side here as well. Is it this or is it this? Well, that all depends on how it's curved. This is sloping downwards. If this were to turn, when I turn this, this would be sloping like this. This would be sloping like this. Whereas this is sloping like that. If I turn it like this, this will be sloping the same way. So I hope you caught that, but basically I'm working out what's going to slope right. Which means that this, from where I'm holding it now, has to rotate counterclockwise 90 degrees to match with this. So what I'm going to do is if this has to come here, this has to come up to here, and that's what I'm going to do. It's going to mess this corner, mess this edge up, but I can easily find it and get it back. So for this to come up here, I'm going to go the 2U, 2R to get it out of the way. Just move this once. Do 2R to bring it back. So now this is coordinated here. And 1, 2. So with that said, I'm going to find that piece that made its way back up here, which is here. And just to test the waters, let's put this down. Nope. Oh, maybe I have to move it in from here. Okay. Yeah, it's probably this one. Now, I noticed something interesting. When I move this here, it fits flush over here. So I think it has to go down like this, which means I was incorrect about the turning. I have to turn it one more over. So what I'm going to do is this now has to fit up here. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 1, 2. Turn this once here. 1, 2, and then 1, 2. And it works. Now I may be moving kind of fast. If that's the case and this becomes more mainstream, I'll certainly do a revisit of the tutorial, but I'm just kind of going through the general strategies. So now all these are in here. Now I just want to find the corner, the edge rather, that fits next to this. Again, this is a triangle and a line all in one side that curves inwards. So which one will do that? Well, probably this. Let's see if it works. And yeah. Big triangle, little triangle, so this fits pretty flush over here. Plus I also notice this is already fitting flush over here, which means this has to rotate. This actually has to rotate to here counterclockwise. Why don't I do that first? So I'm going to move this here. This is going to join this side up here. This is going to articulate with this edge over here. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 1, 2. Move this down by 1 so it can meet the edge that we just moved out of the way. 1, 2, that's here. 1, 2. So now I know these are coordinated right. Let's go find that trapezoid, which is here. Test the waters. This is correct. So now I'm just going to move this down to here. So again, what I'm doing is I'm just positioning things and using each one as successive keystones to the next edge. So turn, 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 straight Rubik's Cube strategy, turn, turn, and down. And we like it. So it looks good. This all looks good. And now finally, last but not least, I know these are oriented correctly. I just have to find the right piece. It's not this. This is a trapezoid with one side that's in a flat plane and one overhanging edge. So that's going to be this guy. This guy has no earthly reason to be up here. So we're just going to move this here and ask ourselves which direction does it go. Long edge, position it down here, it goes over here. So we'll just move it down. Turn, 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 and turn. So we have a fully formed middle layer over here.